Hi guys, now today I'm going to take just a short rest from reviewing any product and making you spend more money. And I'm going to talk about something that has been cooking in my mind for some time now, and I want to know your thoughts on this too. Are you going to agree with me, or is it going to be stick and stones down below in the comments? And the topic is going to be how transparent you need your system to be, or you want your system to be. So we have transparency on one side and realistic sound, something that sounds realistic on the other hand. And you might wonder, but if something is very transparent, it's inherently realistic, isn't it? And I'll argue to convince you that that's not the case, and that the transparency and realistic sound are not one and same, and that pursuing transparency by all means possible can sometimes actually move you away from the realistically sounding music, instruments, vocals, and basically all tones. And how is that even possible, you might ask? Well, basically everything that we are listening in our homes and over our hi-fi systems starts with a recording, and recording is contained on some sort of media, which may be vinyl record or CD or just digital file that is lossless. There are some great PCM DSD files with tons and tons of information contained in them, especially if they're high resolution. So that is the absolute source, 0 point, zero ground of everything that our hi-fi setup will and can possibly play. But the thing is, if you really think about that, recordings are not perfect copies of reality. And when I say reality, I mean if you take acoustic guitar and start playing it in your own room. I'm a lousy guitar player, but I have many friends that are great players. They like playing acoustic guitar. We hang around, we hang in my place. They sometimes sit right here where I'm sitting at the moment and play my acoustic guitar. That really is a strong reality check for what we perceive as very transparent when we talk about audiophile hobby and hi-fi setups. Because sometimes even the most expensive, most advanced hi-fi setups have trouble sounding equally realistic as the real thing. And that's okay, that's normal. They actually never can. But the problem in my mind very often is that we claim that our final goal is transparency. And let's for a moment say that we can even achieve that. Absolute transparency would give you absolutely perfect insight into what's on the recording. And that recording is not perfect and not realistic sounding itself. Short detour here. I remember a jazz singer interview. I'm sorry I don't remember her name. It's a relatively unknown jazz singer here in Serbia. And she was giving some interview and she was talking about her favorite microphones. And she said that she likes, I don't know, some Sennheiser microphone because of this and that. But she likes some other microphone because some other things dislike it for something else. And finally, she said that her favorite microphone personally to record her own vocal while she is singing is some Shure microphone. I don't remember the exact model, that's not important. What is important is that all of these highly expensive professional studio level microphones from professional brands all have their sound coloring, sound character, and impact on the real thing they try to record. And even the angle that you put them at, the distance from you, all of that has an influence. And the moment you put a microphone in front of a person or an instrument, and you start recording, what's entering your data pool is not exactly what you would hear as if you were standing in that room and listening to that person or that instrument player in face-to-face in reality. But the microphone is only the first step. Next, you have a microphone preamplifier. Then ADC, analog to digital conversion. Same thing that our DACs are doing when we are playing the music, this is when it's recorded. And once again, even the best possible, most expensive, most professional ADCs on the market, they're not perfect, like microphones are not. They all have a bit of sound character, something that is added, something that is deducted, algorithms and filters done in a different way. Then from there, it goes into mixing, and then some sound engineers meddle with frequencies a little bit. He says like, oh, this double bass and this bass guitar overlap very often in this song. So I'm going to push double bass a bit lower into the bass region. I'm going to cut some of its frequencies. I'm going to push bass guitar a bit higher into the frequency spectrum. I'm going to shape both of these instruments so I separate them. So software manipulation is used. A lot of things are corrected, added, twisted, and the original sound that was in the room when you tried to record it is lost. You still retain lots and lots of information from it, but you can never ever have the exact realistic copy of the sound that you are trying to record. Now I'm asking you, does it then make sense to try and have a perfect transparency through your HiFi setup of a very imperfect recording? It's like, okay, if the original tone, original voice or instrument was perfectly smooth and glossy like this piece of aluminium foil. You look at it and there are no gaps, wrinkles or anything. And the moment you put that microphone, that mic preamp, that ADC, those software controls and everything, and you put it into a recording and you say, don't worry, all of the data are still contained in this lossless file. It's a high resolution file. You just have to pay $500,000 and you will have perfect transparency through your HiFi setup of everything that we recorded. But as I just explained, you can never ever retrieve the perfectly natural sound that you can hear in real life when physically sitting next or across the singer or the music player. And the moment that was put into recording process, something is inevitably lost permanently. And now we spend so much time and so much money trying to figure out how to have perfectly transparent system, and we think that is our final goal. But once you do have that perfectly transparent system, the best possible final result that you can get out of it is this unwrapped sound from the media that song and that instrument was recorded on. I can try to smooth it out a bit. See, good as new. MQA unfolding, baby, never fails to impress. See, almost realistic, isn't it? Of course not. Once wrinkled, the original tone can never be fully recovered to its original, realistic, natural glory. At least not by thinking only about transparency. Because as I said, even the most transparent system in the world will only show you what's on the recording, and it's this wrinkled paper. But you and the people making those devices, they want us, quite honestly, to forget about that. They want us to believe that we can recover that pre-wrinkling tone. And in my opinion, there are ways to do a lot about that and to make this wrinkly paper appear finally to us much less wrinkled. But transparency is not one of the goals, unless you are a sound engineer and you absolutely want to know what's on that file, what's on that vinyl record, what's on that CD. You want not only to listen to the music and enjoy it, but you want to know imperfections too. Maybe you need to remaster them. Maybe you need to learn how to make a better recording in the future, but you want to be insightful not only into the melody and music and natural tones, but also into imperfections. And there's that divide of perception of what we want versus what we really want. I would argue that most of us, almost everybody, really wants something that will appear to be realistic, very smooth, very liquid-like, time-coherent, have great tone decay and tone trailing, just like acoustic instruments have in real life. But if that's not even on the recording, what can we do about that? Well, some of the things we can do is maybe have a tube in our DAC or our preamp. It doesn't have to measure perfectly, but you know, tube is a perfect hardware reverb machine. Positive feedback, but in a tiny and very non-destructive and very pleasant way. Reverb time coherer. I never heard anybody say that, but I'm going with it. So that's one way. Another way, if you ever heard about something like Decaware pills, there's a company, I think the name is Decaware, they make RCA pills, so-called pills. You put it back on the analog inputs of your preamp or your integrated amp or your headphone amp, and you connect your cables coming from your source into those pills in the back. And what they're doing is they make sound more fluid, more time coherent, more mild, pleasant. How are they doing that? By having well-calculated, high-quality capacitors in line with the signal. And capacitors are another hardware way to put smoothing onto the signal, to have a bit of this wrinkly jitterness from our recordings and our sources, smooth it out a bit so this appears more flat and more nice. Is it transparency oriented? No, it's not, because those capacitors, they do some smoothing. They take a bit of this high frequency, low in level, jittery kind of detail from the sound, but a lot of noise and unrealistic stuff that entered there through our technology get ironed that way. And the resulting effect is the sound that actually appears more natural, more fluid, and more realistic to us. As I mentioned before, tubes have tendency to do that. Some other stuff in hi-fi setups have tendency to do that. Last example, Daniel Hertz. It's a high-end hi-fi equipment designer that's joined with Mark Levinson, I believe. And they're now making highly expensive high-end brand, Daniel Hertz. And I listened to that gentleman explaining what is really new and fantastic inside of his topology and brand and everything. And at one moment he is explaining and talking about an algorithm that makes your music more time coherent, more continuous sounding, more fluid sounding. And he's basically using fancy words to describe a reverb effect. Okay, it may as well be the best possible, most pleasant sounding reverb effect in the world, but in its core, it sounds quite a lot like a reverb. Now, this is not a claim, this is not an attack on Daniel Hertz. I actually think it's a smart idea. That's why I'm mentioning all of this. Please do not get me wrong. I'm not arguing against transparency. As you advance and your system advances and you get more and more transparent gear, first you gain that basic clarity, like that each tone sounds crisp and clear and clean, that it's well separated from another tone, they're not overlapping and muddying each other. That's a good starting hi-fi setup. Then you may want a bit more even than that, like for your tones to have realistic tone timbre, to sound harmonically rich, to have all of these micro inner textures and micro vibrations and resonations that real instruments and vocals have. And you can achieve that too. Next level is to actually have so much transparency coming all the way from the recording through your hi-fi setup that you can hear small spatial cues that were recorded. For example, if it's an acoustic recording, you can, on a great setup, hear that how big a room is, how far away the walls are, how long reverberation of bass and reverberation of higher instruments, higher pitched instruments, how long all of that lasts. It's creating almost sonorous experience. But in my experience, at one moment, you'll reach a threshold where you have so much transparency that you can hear singer licking their lips in between words. And that does not add to the music experience. It doesn't add to the melody, but we are audiophiles, we still like it. But after that, the only thing that you will get by increasing transparency even further and further is that you are going to have more and more insight into the imperfections of the recording. And instead of that, what I'm suggesting is that you aim for transparency at first. You go and remove as many veils from your sound as you feel is needed. And trust me, after removing your third veil and thinking, wow, it cannot get cleaner than this, it will. It will go to 10th, 15th, you'll remove so much veils. But at one point, you're going to be like, I don't need any more transparency. I can hear even more things that I honestly need to hear. Having even more incisiveness into the recording does not bring more musical enjoyment, does not make that sound more realistic and more lifelike. It just makes me more obvious of the recording itself. At that moment in your hi-fi journey, I believe it's time to think about things that are not necessarily transparency, but they use small, well-thought-out, well-tuned tricks to make your sound appear more realistic and more lifelike than it possibly could, because recording was not like that in the first place. And I think that some of you will disagree strongly with me on this, but I firmly believe this is the case. It's just that we are sometimes focused on something for so long that we cannot see a forest from the trees. And I think it's like that in the audiophile world. We use that transparency, aim for perfect transparency so much that we end up forgetting that we are not sound engineers. We do not want perfect transparency if that means not perfectly realistic sound, and sometimes even a bit of cheating and additions through resonations, positive feedbacks, filtering of the signal and things like that. If that is done very skillfully, so it doesn't take much or basically almost anything at all from the transparency and from the recording data, but it augments the sound in a way that what ends up coming out of your speakers or your headphones actually sounds more lifelike. I really don't think that we should care how was that achieved. Well, if you like tech, if you like pondering and thinking about that, go knock yourself out. But if your goal is enjoying music, enjoying melody, enjoying beautiful vocals and naturally sounding instruments, why would you care if that was achieved by a bit of spicing and manipulating the data signal so it actually appears more beautiful and more impressive? And I do think that it's like that throughout our whole lives. I have friends that often say that they like natural-looking women. But in reality, what they mean by that, most often, is that they don't like tacky makeup. Makeup that doesn't have taste and style. They want a woman that has good natural features, but also know how to slightly improve them and augment them with a really, really subtle fixing up of her eyebrows, hair, and maybe some foundation, so you don't see all of the imperfections on her skin. She still looks very natural. For our dumb man brain, we might even think, yeah, she looks like that when she wakes up. No, my friend, she doesn't. She's just very skilled in a way to use all of what she has in a best way possible and augment it slightly to be even more beautiful to our eyes. And that's my honest opinion when it comes to HiFi. You aim towards transparency a lot, but at one point you need a bit of a beautifying touch that will make things appear even more lifelike than they possibly could if you only blindly followed transparency and transparency alone. So let me know your thoughts and experiences on this topic. Or have you ever even thought about it? That would be all for today, guys. See you next time. Bye.